In this segment, we are going to focus our attention on the highly spoken about side door at Beverly's Garfield Heights, Ohio home on Thornton Avenue. This door was the most frequently used door at the home. The front door was only used for salesmen, certain guests, and summer use. The rear door, off the kitchen, was rarely used at all. I can say for myself, growing up in Garfield Heights in the 60s, this was a commonality. I titled this segment The Magic Door, not because of its conspiratorial reference, but in the fact that the door was locked when Barbara Klonowski arrived at approximately 1:30 and unlocked when Ted Jarosz arrived at approximately 4:30 p.m. This would indicate that someone unlocked the door after Beverly was murdered before leaving out the back door that was left wide open. Or someone simply left out the side door. Now, is it possible that Beverly just left the side door unlocked when she came home and the interior door partially open? She was expecting Barb. She might have just left it open for her. But Barbara says that the door was locked when she arrived at 1:30, and Ted says that the door was unlocked. And that would lead you to believe that someone else unlocked that door. But is there something we may have overlooked? And I believe there has been, thus the magic door. We must keep in mind, however, that all scenarios, if they are to be considered, must match the actual evidence that is known, and we would call that the best evidence. Now, for example, in the case of John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, murdered around 12:30 p.m. in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, incidentally, only over a year before Beverly was murdered. There was a government-assembled panel of men called the Warren Commission who claimed only 3 shots were fired that day. This was because only 3 shell casings were found on the 6th floor of the school book depository where the apparent lone gunman Lee Harvey Oswald worked and was accused of being the lone shooter. 3 casings, 3 shots fired. The scenario must match the evidence. 4 shots or more fired, and you can't use the magic bullet theory. As we see in the film, which was taken by Abraham Zapruder that day, which, by the way, was held from the public for 12 years, the first shot misses, the second shot hits John F. Kennedy in the throat, the third shot is the headshot wound. That makes the second shot the magic bullet, which goes through Kennedy's throat, Governor Connolly's shoulder, right shoulder, into his wrist, then takes a left turn into his knee, and which is found at Parkland Hospital on a gurney in near perfect condition. I'm not trying to compare the murder of Beverly Jarosz to the assassination of President Kennedy as conspiratorial. I'm simply saying if you do not use the best evidence in creating the most likely scenario of the crime, you will most likely get incorrect or poor results. As the Assassination Records Review Board proved in 1998, that the magic bullet theory was not only contrived, but insanely impossible. So let's talk about these doors at the home on 10921 Thornton and how they were used in 1964. And the status of those doors when Barbara Klonowski arrived at 1:30 p.m. and when Ted Jarosz, Beverly's father, arrived at approximately 4:30 p.m. on December 28, 1964. After visiting her grandmother, Beverly Jarosz is given a ride home from the bus stop at Dorothy Avenue and Turney Road. A neighbor of Beverly's grandmother saw Beverly at the bus stop on her way home from the grocery store. She instructed her son James to get Beverly and drive her home instead of waiting for the bus. Beverly arrives home at approximately 12:30 p.m. She waves goodbye to James and enters her home through the side door. Although much has been said about Beverly's habits about locking doors, could it be possible that Beverly, knowingly expecting Barbara Klonowski to shortly be there, left the storm door unlocked and the interior door partially open for Barbara while she chatted on the phone with her friend Barbara Kralik? It was 12:30 p.m. Barb was to be there any minute, and she was talking to a friend. Seems like a very safe, nothing to fear situation. However, that day, Barbara Kanowski is late. In fact, late enough to make her think Beverly was upset with her and wouldn't answer the door. I'm thinking Barbara is around 45 minutes to an hour late, finally arriving at approximately 1:30 p.m., where she claims the side door is locked and the interior door partially open. She then goes to the front door and waits a few more minutes, thumbing through a magazine left in the mailbox. She hears noises inside the house, a loud radio, and a scuffling noise as well. She leaves and starts walking home. When you start to create scenarios using Barbara's testimony that the storm door was locked and Ted's testimony that it was unlocked, then that means the killer unlocked the side storm door. This creates several scenarios, of which none may be true. We will go back to Barbara at the side door, but first let's take a good look at the side door from 1964. Now here's a photo of the side door taken shortly after the murder, and it looks like a normal storm door from this period. But let's take a closer look. When I zoomed in on the hardware and handle, I noticed something unusual. There is a slot in the casing of the handle hardware. This slot is for a sliding tongue or type of deadbolt. This is what latches this door and/or locks this door from the inside. Here is a short video of my back storm door from the late 60s, early 70s to show you typical storm doors from that era and how they functioned. Okay, I have a pretty old storm door, which is my back door on the back porch. You can see this is my back porch. You can see all the ice we have here. This is in northeastern Pennsylvania. This door is not going to be here next year, so it's a good thing I'm taking video now because we're replacing our doors so that they don't need storm doors anymore. But you can see on this storm door, it has a knob, but the casing is similar to what you'll see in that photo, only the casing doesn't go all the way to the edge. The casing of this hardware is about, I'd say, 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the door. And you'll see in the photo that the casing of the home on Thornton, it goes all the way to the edge of the door, and there's a slot and a tab where a slide tongue comes out. And it has a lever, not a knob. It has a lever like this. On the inside, you can see there's a lever similar, but this lever has goes on a slide pin. There's a pin. Most people have seen this, and that's what keeps the door from swinging open. I don't believe Beverly her home did not have one of these. It had a tongue that came out of the hardware here on the outside and went into the frame. So it didn't have a knob, it had a lever, and that lever, I believe, was a pull lever. It wasn't one that went like this. And if you look at the photo, you can see how it is designed to pull or push. And I'll talk about this more in the video, how this mechanism works and how it applies to whether Barbara Klonowski knew how this operated. Now, it's too bad that this is the only photo we have of this door. It would be wonderful to see the other side. But it may have a spring pin latch on the inside to keep the door from blowing open in the wind. I searched the internet for vintage doors and hardware and couldn't find anything that functions like this door does, with a slide tongue on the exterior of the door. My best analysis of this door is this. There is probably a spring pin or latching mechanism on the inside of the door. The tongue is for locking the door from the inside by pulling the inside handle. The exterior handle works the same way. It is pulled, not turned, and that releases the spring pin on the inside to open the door, Like I said, we can't see the inside hardware, but the outside handle is definitely a push-pull handle, not a turn-up-down handle. Now, what this could mean is when Barbara Klonowski arrived and went to the side door, it is very likely she tried to turn the handle up or down, and it didn't move. Therefore, she thought it was locked, when all she had to do was pull the handle to release the latch. My opinion is that when you put everything together, the door was never locked. It's not a magic door. It simply wasn't locked because Beverly left it unlocked, and the interior door partially open, so Barb could walk in when she got there. The interior door was partially open when Barb arrived at 1:30 p.m. and when Ted arrived at 4:30 p.m. It always remained the same. The door that is mentioned in the article being open 90 degrees was the door to the kitchen. This photo shows a similar view of standing in the side door entrance. You can see the back door from this viewpoint as well. If Beverly were on the phone standing near the counter or even sitting at the table head, she would be able to see the side door and anyone who may be standing outside, which I believe is what she did that day, waiting for Barbara. Now, since I grew up in Garfield Heights in the 60s, lived on Royal Boulevard, and my father owned Felix Bike Shop where I worked as a kid, I'm super familiar with the area and the people who live there. As you know, I am heavily involved in this case, presenting videos, running a Facebook group page, creating memorial videos, and music featuring Beverly's words from her poetry. Although I've had an interesting experience that made this happen 6 years ago, I feel I have a sense for what probably happened that day. The point of this video is to strongly consider the possibility that Beverly left the storm door unlocked and the interior door partially open for convenience to Barbara Klonowski, who was expected to arrive much sooner than she eventually did. She arrives at approximately 1:30 and thought the door was locked because she was unfamiliar of how the door handle worked. This is a blessing in disguise, for Barbara would have been in extreme danger had she entered the home. I would like to outline the possible scenarios, however, that will require another video, which Scarlett and I will be soon working on.